There we go. Okay, so we are now recording. Okay, so this is what we're going to do.
We're going to have to be really clear in our descriptions.
We are. That's kind of where I was going with this, is we're going to have to be really, really clear in our descriptions. Okay, so there are, this is what we're going to do. I thought this would be kind of a fun way of doing this, is we're going to go back and forth between two sets of footage. One set of footage is at the very bottom of it's the second to the last at the bottom of our RMT Summer Gang playlist, and it's called Level 3 Tasks, Bridger Candidates. It was filmed by Kate Howe. I'm not sure what her connection is with Level 3 Tasks at Bridger Candidates, but they are making a short swing turn. And then the second video in says Ballou and Handley, SRP, in other words, short radius performance. And you're going to be able to see both of them ski some short radius performance turns. And I'd like you to, in particular, look at, let's see, I'd actually like you to look at Dennis Handley's. He's the second skier. Only because his turns are just, well, no, never mind. I take that back. Let's go ahead and look at Ballou's. They're a little bit, they're of a more similar tempo, which is, I think, going to make it easier to compare. And take 2 or 3 minutes here and go back and forth between those two videos. So Jonathan Ballou skiing a short radius performance turn, and
what's the Ballou and Handley one called again?
The one at the Ballou Handley is called Ballou and Handley SRP. Is that one available on the? I'll copy it into the chat. Here we go.
Yeah, so there's one that says Level 3 Tasks Bridger, and then the last one is 6 carved short turn variations.
No, the Level 3 Tasks Bridger.
Okay.
Level 3
is not available.
Dang it. I sometimes make that mistake when I do things quickly. Let me see how quickly I can change the privacy settings. Oh, I know there's a fast way to do this. If I copy it in here, can you open it and look at it, or is it still say private? You guys able to get access to that? And I don't know how to take this on over to the studio or whatever it is that I need to do to.
It seems to say it's private.
Okay, gosh dang it.
Unless somebody else is having more success than I am.
Okay, well, study the Ballou Handley stuff for a minute, and let me see if I can figure out how to I know there's something that I need to do. Okay, wait a minute, settings. Yeah, I'm sorry, gang. Try this again. I'm going to come at it from a different angle. So keep studying Ballou and such for a minute. Let me see if I can get these other ones loaded up.
Just to be clear, we can get the Bridger Bowl, but we can't get the Ballou and Handley.
Oh, it's Ballou and Handley that you can't get. Oh, okay. Okay, well, let's start with those. What, when you look, you guys, and I know that Dom, you sent me that list a while back, but that was the week that my internet went out. And so I couldn't get back to all of those. What about the last one that I put on there that says six carved short turn variations, Riley McGlashan? Can you guys see that? Can you guys open that one? Can you view that one, I should say? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So in that footage of Riley McGlashan, let's look at because he's got a variety of turns here. Started about, right there. Yeah, I don't like those. Round or short turn. Let's do that. Right at about 30 seconds where it says round or short turn. And he has a very distinct turn. I would rather look at somebody else's turns, but that's who we have right now. So let's run with that. Okay, so with that in mind, when you've had a chance to look back and forth between those two videos, who'd like to take a shot at starting with pressure control, specifically regulation of magnitude? And what I mean by that is, you know, and Jim, I'm going to go back. I kind of watched your video again yesterday because I want to make sure that I'm representing this cleanly and clearly. And I think that you did a very good job in the movement analysis training that you and Josh did. And when you look at the language of the 5 fundamentals where it talks about regulation of magnitude of pressure is, you know, regulating the ski-snow interaction. And I think that Jim, you used that word interaction a lot. In other words, at what point in the turn does the ski-snow interaction cause the ski to engage? And what we spoke about previously in the last couple of weeks was we described what an engaged ski, what we're looking for, and what is the effect then on the body. So you guys, just to be clear and so that we're all on the same page, because I think Dom, you were gone last week. When actually, I think you've been gone for a couple of weeks. When we speak about regulation of pressure control, or excuse me, regulation of magnitude in terms of pressure control, and when the ski actually engages, what are we talking about? How do you know? How do you recognize that? What are you looking for? What are the characteristics?
So I did miss the last 2 weeks. I did view the videos though.
Oh, good.
And yes, I think it was at the end of the second video, I was the one who said when I was coming up through the CERT 3 process, magnitude of pressure was a real third rail. Yes, through this process, I've definitely gained a newfound appreciation for magnitude of pressure. And I think specifically, I was thinking about it a little bit earlier today, the importance of proper center of mass alignment to the base of support, specifically to try to answer your question. Because as we've talked about before in previous sessions that I did attend, you know, something we see with a lot of high-end skiers is a tendency to fall off the ski at the beginning of the turn. So we get it, say, tipped before we get it pressured, versus having that center of mass aligned in a more perpendicular fashion to the base of support before we start making changes to the skis. And something that I think I got out of watching the last couple of sessions is if you have that proper perpendicular alignment, when the skis are tipped, they're going to bend into an arc. And the force from that snow, that center seeking, that centripetal force and the centrifugal force are going to combine to affect that kind of change. Because I think again, I was sort of thinking about how to best understand this, because I think what wasn't said when I was listening to the part on centripetal versus centrifugal force, and maybe it wasn't said because it was implied, but it's, to me, speaks to Newton's third law of motion, namely for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I'm not sure if this is the right word to use in this situation, but I think it kind of comes down to an ability to maintain equilibrium, which is to say balance between those two forces. So when we're in those situations where we move our center of mass inside and away from the line of force, or we're moving our platform, which is to say our skis, outside of the trajectory of our center of mass, that line of force from the ski doesn't pick up our center of mass when we want it to, which is to say early in the turn, but later in the turn. So magnitude of pressure is going to develop after the fall line. So when I think about magnitude of pressure, and as we've been talking about over the various months, we know that by default, there's always going to be more magnitude of pressure after the fall line than before it. But it would seemingly behoove us to be able to develop more magnitude of pressure earlier in the turn. And I think that's especially true when looking at high performance turns like the ones in this video you've popped up here. So sorry, that was a very long-winded answer, I suppose, but I feel a lot more comfortable speaking about magnitude of pressure, or to magnitude of pressure, and moreover being able to relate it to different skills. And I guess the last thing I'd say about this, then I'll end this harangue, but if we've maintained that equilibrium or that balance, and we can then undo that inclination by flexing our outside leg after the apex of the turn, and allow that inertia that's built up to allow our center of mass to realign laterally and move our body back over the hill, that motion, and therefore have a kind of rhythm and flow to our skiing, which again, I would say we're seeing in this skier here in the video you've shared with us. What's up, TJ?
Hi, honey. Well done.
Well, can I say something?
Yes, you can say something. There you go. Say hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Todd.
Good.
TJ?
Now, you know what I think about regulations? They're stifling.
Okay, we're
Bye.
going. Bye. Regulations in general, right in there with laws, rules, you know.
Doesn't work for all.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yes. Okay, so Dom, I think that was commendable, the way that you spoke with confidence, the way that you brought in, you know, all different pressure skills or all different pressure fundamentals. And I think for this level of group and for this level of conversation, it's very accurate. Here is then, I got a couple of questions. So one question had had to do with when you talked about before after aligning the center mass along the length of the ski in order to bend the ski. Does that then mean if the center mass is not aligned right in the middle of the ski, that the ski won't bend?
I guess I would answer that by saying no, not necessarily won't bend, but it would probably bend later in the turn. Or let's say it wouldn't have that early engagement above
What
the
if-
floor line.
What if the center of mass was in front of or towards the forward end of the base of support?
So you mean if there was a forward pivot point as well?
Well, you're talking pressure.
Yeah,
aren't you?
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm sorry. My brain's going all over the place here.
Yeah, it's only September. We're getting there.
Um, yeah, I mean, there would still be bend, but it wouldn't be from the center, which is what we want more ideally, don't we?
Well, so, keeping in mind that the fundamental states that we align or that we adjust the center of mass, relative to along the base of support, for aft along the base of support, it doesn't necessarily say at all costs, keep it in the middle and always spend the ski from the middle.
True, but I mean, in thinking back to past discussions we've had, we've also said it's not like we're going from tip to tail either. It's a very narrow path, right? It's basically from the front of the binding to the back of the binding, if I remember correctly, right? In terms of how we're directing that pressure.
Well, keeping in mind that part of the effective camber on a ski is that if we take the center of mass and we move it more towards the toe piece, that it is going to concentrate. If what we feel and experience as pressure is force over area, the more we decrease the area, the more it increases the force. And with the camber built in, it can amplify some of the force more towards the fore body of the ski, or amplify some of the force more towards the tail of the ski. That said, here's a thought. What if we, rather than assuming that the connection of the two fundamentals, i.e. how we're directing pressure along the length of the ski fore aft and regulation of magnitude, there it is, rather than saying that these two are about always desiring to bend the ski in the middle, could we not say that the connection between the two determines which part of the ski, which area of the ski, the forebody, the middle, the aft, or the whole ski, depending on how we want to phrase that, that determines where the ski bends is going to have, the connection to overall magnitude, that it might affect the overall magnitude. Where the ski bends along the length of it will affect the overall magnitude as well. There's going to be a connection to those two.
Yeah,
That it's not just about bending it just in the center.
No, fair enough. And I think that speaks to tactics. It speaks to the type of terrain you're in as well, and what kind of effect you want to get out of forces. And and how early you want to bring it back to magnitude, how early you want to develop magnitude of pressure in the turn.
Sure, the technique, right. And depending on the snow conditions, if we concentrate the force towards the front of the ski, as well as concentrate the force to the edge of the ski, so that we have a greater opportunity to actually get the ski to interact with the snow earlier in the turn, when there are less forces, overall forces being generated, then that might affect a magnitude that is brought up higher in the turn.
Absolutely.
Sure, for better or for worse, right? But definitely that opportunity. Okay. Anybody else have some thoughts or ideas that you want to bring up? And I think anytime we get an opportunity to have some discussions about skill to skill, and certainly we'll get into these as we see them, as we see the opportunities, but are there any other areas that we want to talk about and clear up as we're getting ready to look at our skiers? I was able to take the blue Handley footage and open it up for public. So I apologize if it reframes our task a little bit, but I think that Jonathan's turns are going to be much more of a different example than Riley McGlashan's turns are. It just, for right now, for looking back and forth between those and the short swing. So let's do this. Pull up the short swing footage, you guys. And keeping in mind that I don't...
Available.
It's not available?
Sorry, is that the level 3 tasks Bridger?
3 task Bridger candidates, yeah.
That one I've got, but the last that you put into the chat, I still can't.
Interesting, because I just changed it. So at any rate, start with the Bridger candidates. Okay. And in particular, I enrolled into short swings too. Sorry, my internet boggles every once in a while and does not want to load. Where do you see the ski snow interaction happening in these turns to the degree that it allows the ski to engage and change not only the direction of the ski, but the skier?
I see it after the fall line into the finish. Like very late in the turn.
Okay.
Almost as it,
Cool. So speak to the regulation of magnitude then, Kate, relative. So grab another skill, speak to the relationship of the two, and walk it through all of the phases of the turn.
So, and yes. So I think the pattern is actually pretty consistent with all of the skiers. Some of them to a higher degree than others. But what I see, if I'm going to connect it to edging, is that the skis are very flat at the top of the turn. They remain very flat until they come through the shaping and sort of start like heading out of the fall line back across the hill, and then they get suddenly edged. And that, I would also say, corresponds with the magnitude of pressure part. So there's very little pressure on the skis, or very little interaction between the snow and the skis in the top almost 2/3 of the turn, and then a lot of interaction at the very bottom of the turn.
Okay.
So that you see them move back across, you see the skis. I know it's another skill, but you see the skis rapidly change. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
Good, say it.
I was going to say they rapidly change direction at the bottom third of the turn.
Oh.
But that's
So,
not really what I mean, because
okay.
if you look at it, there's actually, and I can bring in the third skill of rotary if you want me to.
You know what? As trainers, that's not only is our prerogative, but occasionally we need to be able to talk about, a third skill and observation of it, even though we are prioritizing to look at the interaction specifically between two skills. So by all means.
So what I see is, because they have their skis very flat in the top or 2/3 of the turn, it allows them to use a lot of leg rotation or a lot of rotary to twist the skis a lot. And then once they've twisted the skis across the fall line enough and the forces line up, then the edges engage, and there's a lot of ski snow interaction at the bottom part of the turn.
Okay, good. One of the things I was going to ask you to do is, we quite often will say these two skills are happening this way at the same time, but we don't necessarily talk exactly what the correlation is, but you did at the end there. So in other words, to say that the skis reorient or twist or rotate, and as the edge angle increases, it increases to the degree that there's enough ski snow interaction that the skis actually load, they engage, they bend, they track in the direction that they're facing, right? See, you can use any of those terms that help you describe what it is, how you recognize when that ski snow interaction is is displaying enough magnitude of pressure that it's actually changing the direction of the ski and the skier.
I liked a lot what Kate did there, going from magnitude to edging to rotary. I thought it was appropriate too, because unless I'm mistaken with these tasks, with this short swing turns, the skis are supposed to be tipped, then twisted. And I think as Kate pointed out, these skiers are seemingly twisting them to an edge. And so again, that's, as Kate said, why I think a lot of the magnitude of pressure is only being developed after the fall line, after
And
they're putting on edge.
you bring up a really good point, Dom, is that in one of the describers of one of the short radius turns, we speak about a hallmark patterning of tipping the skis before the skis change direction. But that's not this turn. See, this is a different task.
Yeah, this is a short swing, not a short turn.
Short radius performance.
Short radius
Exactly.
performance, whatever you call it.
Right. And that's, I think short radius performance is a title that we give it because it implies that perhaps there is that hallmark patterning. The reality is there are many different short radius performance turns. And when you watch this skier skiing this short radius turn, where might this particular blend of fundamentals, this particular short radius turn, where might this be highly functional, very applicable, very appropriate?
Bumps.
Cool. Where else? Yeah, I heard you say it, Donnie. Say it again. Why?
To help with the speed control, one factor.
Good. What is it about these turns that would make them a little more functional in terms of, and when we say speed control, keep in mind, it's like I always tell a lot of my clients that sometimes speed control means control with speed. In other words, having more control to carry more speed. It doesn't always mean decreasing speed. So if this is a turn that might actually help us keep our speed from getting away from us or controlling our speed in a declining sense, what is it about this turn that would help us to slow down in an area that might be speeding us up, like the steeps?
The friction across the hill.
Okay. The friction. So say more about what causes us.
Actually, to keep it on our topic, the sudden increase in magnitude of pressure across the hill. So it's taking the skier in a direction out of the speed direction, in a slowing direction.
Out of the yikes zone.
Yeah.
Okay. And I liked when you started talking about the friction piece there as well. Once again, friction, when we talk about, oh yeah, we're creating friction with our skis. Can we rather than that being a term that we all nod and say, yeah, sure, I know what you're talking about. What is it about how the skis are being used that creates more friction versus more bend, engage, and direction? Talk about the relationship of those two things in this type of a turn. Anybody? Bueller?
All right, so I'm going to go on a limb here.
Good girl.
Because the ski is the initiation, and it has the most magnitude because it hits the highest edge angle also at the end. The friction, we have ability to basically, if we need to, pump, and we have a larger area to create friction.
Okay, I missed about every third word there, so now you get to repeat it and smooth it out.
All right, so because the ski is through the initiation turn, and through shaping area on the snow to create friction, and then therefore having a sudden increase of magnitude as you hit that highest edge angle towards the end. The option to slow down through friction and put on the brakes, or decrease the brakes, that friction into the area against the snow or the surface.
Okay.
Just to
That's-
clarify, yeah.
Go ahead,
That
Tom.
was,
So, yeah,
No,
I-
that's, yeah,
think
I'm
that-
sorry. Go ahead.
I think what because I was having a hard time hearing as well, but I think what I got from that is a flatter ski is going to have more surface area on the snow, therefore there'll be more friction versus an edge ski. So yeah, and I understand that's now part of the task. So it's maybe not about, so by nature, if you're starting out with a flatter ski, you're not going to be developing as much magnitude of pressure above the fall line versus, say, in a more typical performance short turn, when I would think anyway, ideally, you want to tip the ski, do a bit of an edge angle above the fall line to develop some magnitude of pressure earlier in the turn. But what I'm hearing you guys saying with this short swing turn, by design, you want to keep the ski flatter, less edged, at least through initiation, and then tip it more in shaping?
If we have a ski that is lighter, flatter, easier to rotate, so that we can gradually increase the edge angle. And Jim, this is where you can help clear up some things as well. We tend to think of that as friction. I know I've heard John Wilchin describe some of that, especially as the ski is tracking sideways and we increase the edge angle as shear. As it starts to scrape the snow, it slows us down. And at some point, there's enough of an edge angle that instead of shear or scraping the snow, the ski will actually deflect in the direction that it's pointing, which is across the fall line, and therefore it's not in as it's not going to be as prone to accelerate as much in the second half of the turn. And so it's an opportunity for us to use a turn. Sometimes these might be called a braking short radius turn, also known as a short swing, but the idea is that it's a turn that has a shorter pressure phase, and it has more of a, you'll even notice as the skier is skiing, more of a slightly forward pivot point. You know, it's a very classic
You're
short radius turn.
breaking up.
Oh man, how much of that did you
Yeah.
catch? How much of that did you catch?
I,
Didn't do that at all.
So Donnie, you didn't hear any of it at all. What about the rest of you?
I caught all of it.
I caught all of it.
Donnie,
Okay.
the issue is you.
It's just connectivity, unfortunately. Jim, would you like to step in as our technical editor and make any corrections or kind of help clear up when we are talking about friction versus direction, which is kind of a Bob Barnesism, what's happening with the skis. I think that we're on track in terms of looking at this as a turn that is highly functional, that it does offer more braking opportunities, or at least an opportunity to not accelerate through the gravity zone as much. But how we're talking about friction and shear and such, is there anything there that we need to clean up?
I would be happy to jump in right at the moment.
Thank you.
That's
Hey,
one of
he's
those
home.
little- I am. It's one of those little pieces that's, I kind of let it go a lot, but it is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, right? And that's that it's not actually the friction that slows you down. That's not what it is. Because theoretically, the plastic on the bottom of the skis can slide sideways as fast as it can slide forward. You know, so it's not the fact that the ski's flat and going sideways that slows you down. It's more of, Jen, I think you talked about it's the scraping of the ski over the snow, and it's actually displacement of the ski or the snow. And as the ski gets tipped higher and higher on the edge, what happens is as it goes deeper into the snow, or if the snow is harder, like on ice, and it holds into the snow and there's less displacement, right? Then the skier is forced in the other direction more quickly. I don't know if that makes it less confusing or more confusing. And so what happens in a braking short radius turn is that higher edge engagement later in the turn, when the ski grabs, is actually pushing the skier back up the hill, as opposed to pushing the skier sideways or with a very early high in the arc before the fall line, pushing the skier down the hill. Right? So if you engage the skis very high in the turn in very steep terrain, it's going to project you down the hill. Right? Am I making sense, Jen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yes.
And so what I think about sometimes, you know, I heard the comments about bumps and trees went through my mind at times, and steeps and more of a braking short radius turn. And it is, by the way, kind of interesting to listen to the whole commentary without watching the video, because I listen for whether or not the commentary itself makes sense. You know, is it possible that that makes sense? But what I think about sometimes is I don't want to create an arc that causes me to move faster down the hill. I want to have my skis change direction and create an arc where the skis are engaged later in the turn that allows me to, that's where the speed control comes from. Because the push of the snow against the ski as they engage later causes me to go more against gravity rather than with gravity. That's what causes the braking action. That's just how, I mean, that's how my mind works around it.
Excellent. That's why I wanted you to speak to it. I think, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one more thing that as I listen, I think one of the things that happens, especially in the, well, movement analysis in general, and especially as we get into this level of movement analysis, is that, you know, I listened to Kate's description, and once again, I didn't watch the skier, so I can't really speak to the accuracy of the description. But what is interesting is that we all want there to be an absolute answer, you know, a place in which the skis engage with the snow, you know, and that's when they start to cause the skier to start moving, or moving in a new direction. Jen, I heard you describe it really well, but I'm not going to try and repeat it, about how there's a point in which the skis go from one edge to the other, maybe they're being redirected, and the skier is still drifting sideways to some degree, all right, or in the old direction, if you will. But at some point, the interaction between the ski and snow creates enough pressure, enough magnitude of pressure that it causes the skier to start moving in the new direction. You know, that's that point is a gray area. It's not I mean, you can't, it's not a snowflake. All right. So it takes a period of time, and then you look and the skier starts to move in the new direction. That period of time, by the way, could be a quarter of a second. All right. But it doesn't happen in you know, it doesn't happen at a point, it happens over some distance. So there is some judgment that we're making. And that's what I think sometimes happens as we watch skiers and listen. It's like, I think it happens here. And someone else says, well, I think it happens more here. And there can be a little bit of a gray area. What we're trying to do is make an assessment. And one of the questions we're asking is, where do you see the skier engage with the snow? And are they doing it at a place that's appropriate for the task? So one of the things, Jen, that I know that, because I've stood side by side with you enough times, one of the things that happens is we watch a skier and they're making some short radius turn, whether it's a short radius, short swing kind of thing, or a more performance short radius turn. And the comment is, it's like, I think they can engage with the snow higher in the arc of the turn. That's what I would like to see. All right, I'd like to see them create that pressure, that magnitude of pressure piece would engage with the snow before the fall line more. And right now I see it engaging with the snow more after the fall line. And that's what we're doing. We're making a judgment as to whether or not we think that skier could do it more. You know, in a really steep terrain doing short swing turns, they may not be able to engage the ski as high in the arc of the turn as we sort of imagine that it could happen. Right? So anyway, that's the part I wanted to add. What the heck happened?
There we go. Sorry, I was muted.
No.
No.
My phone.
No, no, excellent. Thank you. No, that was all very good, and that's exactly what I wanted to have cleared up. I think, especially when you talk about that, because the skis are rotated, steered enough across the fall line before the edge angle is engaged, and therefore there is enough magnitude of pressure pushing back against the ski, and being that it is centripetal, it will always be center seeking or back up the hill. It's one of the reasons why you perhaps don't see the skier's center of mass deflect back and forth from side to side. It's why you do see the skier's center of mass come more directly down the hill in this type of turn.
Okay, that's where I had my question, because originally we posed this with where do not only the skis change direction, but the skier changes. You didn't see those skiers, the body change direction a whole lot. I mean, you'd see the knees kind of change direction, but you wouldn't see the body, or it was this. So
Very much so. There's very little change of direction of the skier, the center of mass. And what's interesting is how often a skier, whether it's general public or whether it's an instructor, will say, well, isn't the goal of a short radius turn for my body to point and travel straight down the hill with my feet going back and forth?
not on a short radius turn.
Depends on the turn, doesn't it?
Yeah, on a short
So-
swing, yeah, you're probably more directly down the hill body wise, but a performance short radius, you're still moving. Your center mass trajectory is still slightly inside of that turn, but it's still moving.
So now, gang, you should be able to, I did finally go in and figure out how to change the setting for Baloo and Handley. It should absolutely be available to you now. So now take a look at Jonathan Baloo's short radius performance turns. And let's come at it from initially the same perspective of start with magnitude. And when the ski-snow interaction happens to the degree that the skis engage and change the direction of not only the skiers, but start to change direction of the skier, not only the skis, but the skier.
Jen, can I interject a piece on that question that you're asking?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So as you watch, we're watching Jonathan right at the moment. That's the task.
Yes. We're kind of comparing
as
and
you-
contrasting two different types of turns. Yes.
As you're watching Jonathan, know that the point at which the skis engage with the snow may not just move the skier back across the hill. They could actually begin by moving the skier down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it might be more down and less across, and then gradually become more across and less down. All right. So the question, I think the question that I hear Jen asking is, where do you see the skis engage with the snow? And the engagement is enough that it actually starts to cause the skier to change direction more than just some combination of gravity and momentum would change the skier's direction.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, by changing direction, I don't necessarily mean just left, right. If you think about in the initiation phase of a turn, if a ski is starting to engage to the degree that it's going to affect the trajectory of the skier there, then the skier, you're absolutely right, would go down the hill. Otherwise, the skier would keep going in the direction of the previous turn.
Yes, gravity and momentum would be the only thing. They keep going along that line where the skis were pointed, even though the skis were maybe turned in a new direction, the skier would not actually begin to change direction yet.
Correct.
And so when I'm watching, and this is the webinar thing that I did earlier in the summer, was where do you see that engagement? Where does it take place that the skier is actually affecting their direction change more than just gravity is and more than their momentum is?
Mm-hmm. And you do actually see it even a little bit more in the second skier in Handley than you do with Baloo. You know, he's intentionally I believe moving with the skis even more effectively. So who wants to jump in and make a skill-to-skill relationship description with one of those skills being pressure control, regulation of magnitude? You get to choose the other skill and describe what's different with this type of performance.
Jen, can I just, I have it stopped at like 04, and where you can see both of them, you can see Baloo as well. And you really have a good shot there because they're both about the same point in the turn, of how they're moving with their skis differently, and where their center of mass is aligned with.
Say more. For it, because it's a long second, so I see a lot of, like, a couple phases of the turn in that 1 second.
Yeah, but they're almost about the same. And center of mass is already trajecting towards the new apex, and he's creating angles not only in his lower body to create an edge angle, but he's also creating angles in his upper body to control how far that center of mass is moving inside as he's moving it towards the apex of the next turn. The other skier is more aligned or squared up with his skis at this very second, and is traveling with, and actually has a longer, straighter outside leg and looks more inclined at that very moment. And I'm not sure, but because the magnitude, the ski engagement is of them is approximately right after the apex. The snow is spraying sideways, and you're seeing the ski engagement there, but the way he is traveling is different.
So go back to the front skier, which is Jonathan. Where do you see the ski engage? How we would talk about an engaged ski where there's enough ski snow interaction that you're seeing enough magnitude develop that it's engaging and affecting the performance of the ski. Where are you seeing that?
Right about the fall line.
Look a little bit above the fall line.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I see Jonathan's more as from a skill-to-skill relationship about magnitude and edging, really. Because I think, as I was saying before, he's tipping it to an edge above the fall line and spreading it out that much more, the magnitude of pressure that much more over the course of the turn.
Yeah, he's starting the ski engagement, even though is starting to engage right after initiation, right after he changes edges, he's engaged, and he spreads the magnitude out along the length of the shaping phase of the turn and actually lightens up in the finish, because he's already redirecting his center of mass towards the new outside ski.
Say that last part again, Jenny.
Because of the way he's controlling his center of mass and directing pressure to the new outside ski. I know I drifted into foot to foot there, but
Okay.
the finish, he's spreading out the magnitude from basically right at the end of initiation, where he engages his skis through shaping, spreads out that magnitude. And at the finish of the turn, he's actually, because of how he's controlling his center of mass through upper body angulation, directing the pressure to the new outside ski earlier, he's able to get that ski engagement that early. And
Okay.
where Hadley, on the other hand, has more, the magnitude happens much later in the turn, the engagement happens much later. And I'm going to go with the edging, prioritizing edging here, because he's inclining more at the initiation, and adding the lower body angulation through the shaping. So the edge angle is the highest towards the end of the turn, or towards the end of the shaping phase of the turn. I'm sorry, I'm trying to watch it and see it at the same time. And it seems to me that when we go to that foot to foot pressure, when we're doing a compare contrast, that he might be slightly inside towards the end of the finish, or into the shaping into finish, causing kind of a timing thing on that.
Well, I don't, so here's how I think, here's where I think we want to be careful, is that I think our tendency is to, so we look at two skiers like this and we say, well, one is better than the other because of the way of the timing. When I watch these two skiers, what I see is different, slightly different intention. I see slightly different tempo, slightly different radius.
Yeah,
Right? So the skier behind, go ahead, Dominic.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think with Dennis, I think it's as you say, it's a different intention, because I think he's aligning his center of mass over that new outside ski and moving with it, just in a way that's different than the way that Jonathan's doing it. I think with Jonathan, it's happening like almost simultaneously. I mean, it's like he's aligned to that new outside ski, and there's that immediate biting of the edge, and it's leading to a tighter radius turn. And I think with Dennis, as I say, he's aligning to that new outside ski. He's directed pressure to it, and he's just, I think, purposely holding on to it just a little bit longer before he starts tipping that ski. And I think that's what's resulting in a slightly larger radius turn by comparison. But I think he's doing that on purpose.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, and it always helps to have some inside information. So I do remember that when we had been watching short radius turns, we had been, this was, so at another time, don't do it right now, but at another time, when you look at some of the short radius turns of the crew, especially SRP1, that was the first set of short radius turns we had seen. And what we saw were a lot of skiers who had a lot of magnitude, a lot more magnitude and pressure buildup and ski performance after the fall line than before the fall line. And so there were some discussions among the group, something to the effect of, what would you need to do to move the pressure higher in the turn so that you could get more ski activity higher in the turn? And when they skied off, they agreed one of them was going to show a shorter end of the radius and one of them was going to show a larger end of the radius. It's something that we quite often will do, is show two different pictures, slightly different tempos, slightly different radius. So come back to one of the things you were saying, Dom, is that you were creating a connection between magnitude and a regulation of magnitude and edging. And you were saying that because he's edging the ski early, speak a little bit more about not that he's edging the ski early, but how he's edging the ski? What is it about how he's edging the ski early? Because we all think to ourselves, oh, I need to make these short radius turns where I've got this really early edge engagement. And I'll tell you, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, for myself personally and for a lot of the skiers that I'm working with. So what is it about the way that he's doing it that's making him successful at getting an early enough ski-snow interaction and engagement?
So I think it probably goes back to that point about there's that perpendicular relationship between his center of mass and his base of support. So before he starts tipping the ski, he's aligned, he's pressured what is to become that new outside ski. So because he's maintained that perpendicular relationship, he's able to start tipping that ski with his lower legs. So he didn't try to tip his skis before he established his platform, which would have just pushed him too far inside of the turn anyway, and negated his ability to use his lower legs effectively to tip his skis. So it's that careful balance between the two, and I think it's happening as you said. I think now I understand that they were illustrating two different types of turns, but it's just with Jonathan, I think it's that establishing pressure to that new outside ski, establishing that platform, and then quickly tipping the skis to get that early engagement and get a really tight radius turn, versus with, I think Dennis is doing the same thing. It's just from a dirt standpoint, it's a little different. So in each case, you were showing the candidates how to effectively create magnitude of pressure before the fall line. Just
Okay.
one was happening a little bit quicker than the other.
Okay. So, but anybody else want to speak to what it is that Jonathan's doing, or a skill-to-skill relationship that you see, either Jonathan or Dennis, or even some compare contrast between the two? Same task, just some slightly different parameters of how they're performing the task. Anybody else? Donnie, you want to take a stab at it, or Jenny or Kate?
I had to switch to a phone. I'm at just listening now.
Okay,
Sorry.
not a problem. Not a problem. Anybody else? Kate, are you able to look at it and talk to it? Jenny, did you want to say any more?
Hi.
Hi.
I think what I see, am I on? There we go. I think what I see going on is when Jonathan tips the skis at the top of the turn, he does it making small movements with his feet and his lower legs, whereas and so that the ski engages sooner, and he can adjust, he can gradually increase the edge angle or decrease it as needed with a lot of precision. Whereas what I see in Dennis is, although his lower legs do tip, it actually looks as if his center of mass, or of his hips, come across the skis sooner, maybe just a fraction of a second before he starts to tip with his lower legs. And so he is not as balanced over the outside ski as Jonathan is.
Okay.
So creating that and not being able to fine tune that edging to change the radius of the turn, or the magnitude of the interaction. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Okay, good. I mean, I think if Jonathan's showing more of a you know, a shorter, not a shorter, but kind of a standard short radius performance. And if Dennis is intentionally drawing out, especially drawing out the top of the turn, I think he's kind of riding that fine line of tipping the skis and creating a little bit of inclination and right on the verge of getting a little bit inside and not tipping his feet and legs quite as aggressively as Jonathan, perhaps for the intention of drawing out the top of the turn. Cool. Anybody want to take a stab at speaking about, so now compare contrast rather than Dennis and Jonathan, compare contrast their turns to the short swing, specifically speak to the interaction between pressure magnitude and rotary.
Jen, can you repeat that? I only caught parts
Sure.
of that.
Okay, so here's where I'm going with this, you guys. Here's the end product that we'll play with a little bit before we go on to maybe watching a couple other skiers is, if you were going out on the hill and you were tasked with or wanted to play with going back and forth between a gliding short radius turn and a braking short radius turn, we've explored some pretty specific interactions between pressure control and edging in both of those turns. What about pressure control, specifically magnitude and rotary? Can you phrase simply a compare, you know, kind of in a compare contrast between a short radius performance and a short swing, going back and forth between this footage and the previous footage?
I think with the short swing turn, we're looking at pressure, magnitude of pressure, and rotary.
Mm-hmm.
Is what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the short swing turn, the skis are very flat at the top of the turn, sort of the top 2/3, allowing the skiers to use a lot of leg rotation to rotate the skis. And consequently, with the flat ski, not a lot of pressure at the top of the turn.
There you go.
And a lot of pressure at the bottom of the turn. I think in the short radius performance turns, because the skis are engaged on an edge in the top of the turn, there's not as much dramatic leg rotation at the top of the turn. It's more drawn out because the edge is engaged with the snow. So they can't just, and because that edge is engaged with the snow, there is interaction with the snow being created. So that the effect is that the rotary is spread out around the turn, the edging is spread out around the turn in terms of the rate at which it happens, and the duration at which it happens. For both of them are much more spread out around the turn, and the same is true for the magnitude of pressure. The ski school snow interaction, although it is actually spread out more around the turn in the short radius performance turn than it is in the short swing turn.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. So
The doorbell rang.
right. Guests are here. So I followed what you said. Does somebody want to come back around and rephrase or summarize what Kate said and bring it together a little more simply?
I like what Kate said there. I think when it comes to the more traditional performance short turns, if we're talking specifically magnitude and rotary, I think it speaks to the ability to ski in and out of rotational separation, as well as a way to the ability to steer the skis back up underneath you at the end of the turn, to regulate the magnitude of pressure throughout the turn, and to keep, in the case of a performance short, to keep that inertia going kind of from side to side, as it were, keep in a rhythm, right? Not have those typical breaks that you're going to see with someone who doesn't spread out that magnitude of pressure as well. So I know we're talking rotary and magnitude, but from a skill to skill to skill standpoint and bringing in edging into the picture, it's that ability to, once you've come out of the apex, to start to shorten that outside leg, to start to flatten the skis and therefore allow it to come back up underneath you. Whereas with the bridger bowl turns, the short swings where there's that sort of perhaps almost conscious break where you're not really developing edge angle until the fall line, tipping the skis until the fall line, it's just going to have a different rhythm. And as we talked about, just because the way that's the effect that's going to have on one's inertia, the center of mass is going to be moving more straight down the hill versus side to side.
I agree completely. Can you make it simpler?
I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot.
We're playing good, better, best. Good, good. Teamwork. Go, Jenny.
All right. In the short swing turns, because the ski was flatter through the initiation into the shaping and lighter, having less magnitude there, it was easier to rotate the skis through those phases. That was a quick rotation, a very rapid rotation, created all the magnitude to come at the end when they rotated. And I'm not changing lane, I'm not drifting lanes, I'm just saying for clarification where they hit their highest edge angle, because they rotated to an edge angle. Where in the short radius turns, both the magnitude and the rate of lower body rotation was spread out along the entire turn, from initiation with an early engagement, with an early edge engagement, again, not drifting, just for clarification, that earlier edge engagement being able to help deliver the magnitude throughout the entire turn and never having a seriously much higher point.
Good. I like what you said about the short swing turns there in particular, that, you know, if we're just looking, we always want to talk about the rotary and the edge, but something as simple as the skis are going to, because there is the majority of magnitude at the finish of the turn, that means that there's most likely a ski that's very light at the beginning of the turn, and it's going to rotate very easily. Good. And that in a short radius performance turn, where the emphasis is, as you said earlier, Dom, edging the skis before any type of attempting of a direction change. It's allowing a ski that is interacting with the snow, it's embedded in the snow, it's any rotary impetus at that point is going to then affect how the ski is bending or how the turn is shaping, but it's not necessarily going to reorient the ski. Good. Good job, you guys. Do we want to look at another skier, or do you want to start wrapping up? I know, Kate, you need to go soon.
I have to go.
Your dogs are announcing your guest. Do you need to go as well, Dom?
Pretty soon, yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's just wrap up tonight. So what are you taking away from tonight as we are taking magnitude and allowing it to be more and more the filter of not only bringing in other skills, but also then looking and comparing and contrasting two different interpretations of one turn and even two slightly different variations of a short radius turn? What are you taking away from tonight?
So for me, just one specific example with with the short swing turns. I always knew per the IDP that the center of mass has to move straight down the hill as opposed to being deflected from side to side. But I didn't really understand or appreciate until tonight how that works from a magnitude of pressure standpoint. Again, specifically how purposely not tipping those skis until later in the turn, until the fall line, how through inertia, it's going to affect that center of mass moving more straight down the hill. So that was a good, for me personally, aha moment on that particular task.
And I think earlier when you started bringing in Newton's laws, and especially when you talked about equal and opposite, that it speaks loudly to that. Yeah.
It was interesting to look at how the rotary and how the edging affected the magnitude. I kind of know that it does, but that was super specific examples and opposite ends. I'm pretty sure that was your point, but I think I got it.
Well, I think it's one thing just to just theoretically say, okay, in general, this is how edging affects magnitude of pressure. But when you start to look in different settings with different intentions within the tasks, then we can see how we can manipulate those variables intentionally to get different outcomes. And ultimately, that's our goal. Cool. What else?
Well, I think that was not always look or what we define as, but what's the intent? Because a short swing, because I'm not real sure what's around the next tree, really tight trees. And it's very handy.
It's one of my favorite turns. I like that turn a lot, especially when it starts to get steeper, steeper, steeper. So
And
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I don't always want to be skiing performance in a short radius turn. Sometimes I want to be skiing more about speed control and preservation and checking out my environment in a short radius turn. Excellent. Donnie, from your opportunity to listen in, what are some things you're taking away?
That right there. Just the not always trying to get the ski hard on an edge, and I like that we have that versatility. And that I need to watch this recording because I missed most of it.
Well, it's up there and waiting for you. Jim, do you have any parting comments for us tonight? Takes him a minute to unmute. Maybe. There he is. Oh, he's on his bike now.
I'm not like it.
I'm reimagining what a Zoom call could be.
That's awesome.
That's how I'm going to put it. So I have another one at 6 o'clock. So
Okay.
it kind of kills some of your day when you start doing that stuff.
No,
So
I understand completely.
But anyway,
We're working.
yeah, the thing that I want to add is that, and I see things like this frequently, is I see things on kind of a continuum. You know, as opposed to a short swing is one thing and a performance short radius turn is another thing. And Jen, this actually came right out of you. It was the first time that we did short swings at a level 3 exam. And we're talking about a contemporary short swing. For those of you that are old enough, as opposed to like a Chekhov Badal short swing. Meaning pivot the skis completely, hammer the edge as hard as you can until it pops off the ground and pivot them again. All right, so the way I see that short swing is I still want to engage the ski as high in the arc as I can to allow me to get the response I'm looking for. If I engage it too high, I find that I can't get the tightness of the turn that I'm looking for in a short swing. If I engage it too low, it just becomes kind of a pivot slip short radius turn. So how do I find those happy mediums? And I think the same thing is true in performance shorts. In other words, it may happen much higher in the arc, but as I do that, there is a change of direction that takes place in a performance short radius turn from one edge to the other edge. It just may not be as much of a change of direction. In other words, a change of the way the skis are pointed.
Awesome. Agreed.
I like the video of the inside of your pocket, Jim.
Oh, is my video still on?
Yeah.
You should know.
A little bit. It's
I'm
pretty
riding my
funny.
bike. I'm riding my bike. I'm on a Zoom call. I'm charging my phone on my spare battery, and I got my wireless earbuds in.
Ah,
You're pretty
technology. You gotta
I
love it.
know. Yeah, reimagining Zoom calls.
I know, right? Right? Life in the pandemic. All right, gang. Hey, listen, great session tonight. And I am certainly open for suggestions for what you would like to do next with our topics. If you would like to stay with magnitude and skill to skill relationships, we've been looking at, different settings, whether it was bumps and different short radius turns and lower level. If you want to take it back into the clinic leading realm. So in other words, how would you then take a skier, and maybe we'll compare contrast a more successful performance and maybe a less refined performance, and what would be a short objective, a 10-minute, a 20-minute objective, and how would you use a task or a strategy, a tactic to then bring two skills together to address what you're seeing. We've kind of done a little bit of this before. We've backed off and been doing just a little bit more technical clarifying, but I think we're kind of in a good place to maybe go back into that realm again.
I agree.
Okay. So
Yeah,
then
I agree.
the next thing is just be thinking whether you want to resume again next week, or if you want to take a week and do it the week after. And I'll send the email out and get that response from everybody.
Next week probably works better for me.
Okay. Okay. No, I'll send that out. Everybody, speak to that effect, what's going to work best for you. And we'll take this back into, it's kind of some real life job skills, if you will. In other words, here's my skiers, here's the setting, here's somebody who's a little more successful, here's somebody who's a little less successful. This is why, right? Have that little bit of technical discussion, and then see if we can come up with ideas about, so now what are we going to do about it? How are we going to display to this group in front of us, as well as somebody that we might be, who might be assessing us, how we could effectively help them explore some options in how they're either timing the skills or how they're moving more effectively with their skills. Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
Good job tonight.